Environment and Public Works Committee. When asked whether the government should be held to the same standards as it requires of the public and the private sector, you stated that, and I quote, actually, a higher standard would be quite appropriate. Do you still believe today that a higher standard for government would be quite appropriate?
I do.
Thank you.
We have a public responsibility that's larger than what I think the private sector has, yes.
So I would like to highlight and submit for the congressional record a Wall Street Journal article from September 9th written by a former EPA employee. In the article, Bill Wyrum states, and I quote, a facility in Charleston, West Virginia that was been previously brought up accidentally spilled roughly 7,500 gallons of toxic chemicals into the local waterway. The EPA's recent discharge of toxic water was many times larger. Yet the agency went after the company with everything it had. End quote. Should the Department of Justice or an independent investigator go after the EPA with everything it has?
When we get the final report to understand what happened, I would expect DOJ to pay attention to that, and I will pay attention to it as well.
Would the Inspector Generals be involved in that application?
Yeah, the Inspector General is also looking at doing an independent review, yes.
Former EPA employee Wyrum also references an incident that occurred during the Clinton administration where a railroad supervisor overseeing a quarry project hired a contractor who accidentally struck a pipeline with a backhoe and contaminated about 1,500 gallons of river water. Though the supervisor, Hannah, was off duty at the time of the incident and had subcontracted the work, the EPA pursued criminal charges against him, and he was sentenced to 6 months in prison because he was ultimately responsible for the safety on the site. You have said that the EPA and you are ultimately responsible for this spill, and you take personal responsibility of this incident, correct?
So the only correction I would make is the Department of Justice is the one that pursues criminal actions.
Okay.
Yes.
Since you believe in parity and a higher standard for government, someone should, from the EPA, go to jail for this incident then. We're making apples to apples.
I am not at all aware that there is negligence or that we didn't do due diligence, and those are the things that the Department of the Interior would indicate.
I would beg to differ. I mean, we knew that there was a problem in here, and we should have alerted everybody along these lines, and I think the chairman of the committee from that standpoint. What actions would the EPA take against a private company who is responsible for a spill of this magnitude?
We actually would be doing exactly the same thing with that company at this stage and looking to independently identify whether or not there was any negligent or criminal activity that led to this. That's exactly the same process we're going through today.
Okay. Now, when the spill was reported to the National Response Center at 12:27 on August 5th, the caller repeatedly emphasized how important it was to notify downstream users who would be affected by the contaminated plume headed towards them. The message was relayed to the EPA. Why is it that the state of New Mexico, the Southern Ute Tribe, and the Navajo Nation all found out about the spill from sources, not the EPA, who caused the incidents in the first place?
It was part of our contingency plan that we always use to take advantage of local information so that there is appropriate notification. Whether or not it was as quick as it could be, I don't know, but that was an appropriate way in which to notify.
Well, so you were notified. Is how hard it would be to pick up a phone?
Well, we have a whole stream. This is not, it's not us individually deciding who to call. There is a contingency plan for notification that's developed with the states, with the local communities, and that's what we initiate. This is not done on the fly. This is a plan that was developed with everybody's input.
Obviously, as a CEO, it failed. It failed miserably. It was way delayed. You have representatives that will testify according to that, the Navajo Nation, the Utes. I want to first move forward a little bit. This lack of trust that's now been instilled within the tribes. How can you expect states and tribes to have trust and faith in your agency to clean up this mess if they can't rely simply on being informed about what's going on? You talk about collaboration, but it shows a very poor respect. And I want to ask one more question before you answer, because I'm running out of time.
Okay.
Why is it so difficult? I know the Southern Utes were on there. For tribes in the states to have seats at the table at the EPA's Incident Command Center, having open lines of communication, or get questions answered about health and sediment impacts. Because I know they are. Well, I look over at the President of the Navajo Nation. This could have been dramatically averted. So I want to know why there's so much reluctancy in those applications?
Actually, there is no reluctance to have the tribes involved to the extent that they want to. They actually were involved in our incident command center. The Southern Utes were there and embedded.
And the Navajo?
We had
And the
11
Navajo?
people embedded in their incident command center and other activities on the tribes.
Something seriously went wrong in this application, and as a CEO, I hope that you would review that. Thank you.
Sir.
All right, we're now under resource rules, which means we've got a second panel